the library when it is open, you have a second job, or you have an evening job, you can't come during the day, this is a new website that is for you. It's a totally virtual website where you can download books, download magazines, download talking books. You can research things, and for those of you who have a child that suddenly at 9 o'clock at night you realize that there's a paper due at 10 o'clock the next morning, come to our website. We have the services and the databases for you to research and complete that paper.
Jan, anything to add?
Nothing more to add. You said it all.
That's all right. All right, so our proclamation reads, the Des Moines Public Library has created and launched a new virtual library website. And whereas this updated website brings information to residents and workers in Des Moines, and whereas today's library users in this digital age expect access to more and more electronic resources, and whereas the library helps bridge the digital divide in today's society, and the library continues to offer many formats that are accessible to everyone. Now, I, the Mayor of the City of Des Moines, on behalf of our City Council and all of our citizens, want to thank you for all the work that you have done, and call upon all of our citizens and civic organizations to access and explore the library via its new website at www.dmpl.org, and to learn more about the many ways that the library experiences helps citizens in their educations, lifelong learning, and quality of life. Let's give the library a big hand. We all right? You get it? Ooh, yeah, she did.
Okay, that's it.
All right.
Thanks.
All right. Our next is Mary Niederbach. Where's Mary? Mary, come on. No, I can do it.
We've been privileged to work over this last 2 or 3 months with people from primary health care who have just shown outstanding compassion and work ethic and helped the city through a difficult project in working with the residents of the Randolph Hotel. So I have something briefly here to read. The council approved the restoration plan and economic support for Sherman Associates, developer, but requested tenants of the Randolph Hotel to be provided with relocation assistance before the renovation begins. Primary Health Care, an organization for improving lives through provision of health care and supportive services, proposed a plan to implement relocation services that provided immediate assistance and coordinated resources for the 90-plus Randolph Hotel occupants. Primary Health Care assessed each tenant's needs, located apartments, provided transportation, worked with social workers, counseled clients, and arranged for movers while meeting the need to vacate the building expeditiously. Other organizations such as United Way, Greater Des Moines Foundation, Polk County Health Services cooperated with primary health care in providing support and resources. Why don't I let you say the last part since that's your name?
Now, therefore, I, the Mayor of the City of Des Moines, on behalf of the Des Moines City Council and the citizens of Des Moines, do hereby acknowledge the excellent work of primary health care in the relocation of residents of the Randolph Hotel and assistance with the homeless and those in need of services and health care. And by the way, I don't want to forget our city staff, and that's one of the reasons we had Mary come up here, because they've worked hard and hand in hand with all these agencies around Des Moines, but in this case, special thanks to primary health care. Are there any primary health care people here? You guys want to come on all up? Let's get
Absolutely, we are.
All right. All right. We looking good? All right, one more.
Are you all set?
Yeah, it was one of those deals where I had like 15 million I thought I should do for this to make my case. Then you end up talking.
All right, we're going to move right into our city council meeting, but we're going to stop at first for some special words from our own city council member, Mr. Chris Coleman. And would you like to have everybody stand, Mr. Coleman?
Yes, thank you.
All right, and those who would like to participate with us, we'd ask you to stand at this time.
Friday marks the 50th anniversary of when John Kennedy was assassinated, and he's been in the news a lot, and I thought I would read a short reflection from his first inaugural address. Let us begin anew, remembering on both sides that civility is not a sign of weakness, and sincerity is always subject to proof. Let us never negotiate out of fear, but let us never use fear to negotiate. Let both sides explore what problems unite us instead of belaboring those problems that divide us. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'll ask the clerk to take roll, please.
County,
Here.
Coleman,
Here.
Hensley,
Here.
Mahaffey.
Here.
Moore.
Here.
Grease. Here. We have a quorum.
All right, item 2 is approving the agenda as presented and/or as amended. Can we have a motion?
Move.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The item passes. Item 3 is approving the consent agenda. Tonight, those are items 3 through 47. And item 4W, Councilmember Coleman votes no. And item 40, Councilmember Moore passes. Actually, before we pass these, I would also vote no on that one, and it seems to me that we had a discussion in the past regarding like items in item 22, whether or not we ought to, there's one or two of those, I think, and item under 22A, and I think item B also, there's some outstanding, they're asking for renewals, and should we have those paid before they renew those? I'll ask somebody a question, I guess, and we can ask for a motion. Otherwise, I'll vote no with Mr. Coleman on W, and I'll also, yes.
Mr. Mayor, to clarify that point, the ones I see that are overlap between your permits and licenses in item 22, Mr. Mayor, I think that's your comment.
I think it's 2, 4, and
Well, it's
item B.
On the licenses and permits, it would be 4O, 4W, and 4H, I believe. Each one of those items are licenses and permits that you're being asked to renew, and they also appear on item 22, which is the assessment of penalties for violation.
So the question that you're raising, Mayor, is that we should not take action on those until we know that they paid the fine?
Correct. And a couple of them, it appears as though they're going to have a suspension up to 60 days, it looks like. So, no, that, but I suppose the license is able to be renewed.
They get one more. They've had 3 in 3 years, and they're eligible for one more.
Okay.
And they lose it for a year.
Revocation, yeah.
Yep.
All right. So with that amendment, that would be my only request. So does anybody in the audience have any other items, which tonight are items 3 through 47, given that item 4W has a couple of no votes, plus the ones that we talked about, and item 40, Councilmember Moore wishes to pass. Anything else?
I'll move the agenda. I'm a no on 35 as well.
All of 35?
Yes.
A, B, C, and D?
Yes.
Okay.
Six yes.
All right. That ends the consent agenda and takes us to ordinances first consideration, which is item 48, amending Chapter 42 of the Municipal Code relating to sound permits for the Brenton Skating Plaza. Council Communication number 13-557. Item A under that is a final consideration. The ordinance above the waiver is requested by the Community Development Director and requires 6 votes. Is there anybody in the audience to speak on item 48 regarding the amendments to Chapter 42 for Brenton Skating Plaza?
Move 48 and 48A.
Right?
Six yes.
All right. It's not 5 o'clock, so let's move on to item 56. We did speak about this item this morning in our workshop, but I think that we owe it to the general public again to speak. Item 56 is regarding the notice of intent to fill the vacancy for Ward 4, council member by appointment, and I'm going to quickly turn it over to our city attorney, who can enlighten all of us again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item actually will give notice that council intends to fill the currently vacant office of Ward 4 council member by appointment. That will be published in the next week or so prior to council actually appointing a person to fill the Ward 4 vacancy, and council has outlined a process by which they're accepting applications and will consider those people that are applying for this particular position. By operation of law, if council chooses to put forward a franchise fee referendum that would authorize a temporary increase in the franchise fee to pay the Cragness versus City of Des Moines judgment, that would necessitate an election sooner than would otherwise be provided. Council's action here would cause, with the intent to publish and assuming that, intent to appoint in the publication of that intent, and then the action to actually appoint would hold the seat filled until the next pending city election, which would normally be in November of 2015. But with the franchise fee referendum, those elections can be combined by operation of law and take place. And at this point, council has indicated a desire to do so at the March 4th election date provided by statute.
All right. Are there any comments? Anybody in the audience regarding that process? All right. Any comments, council?
I'll move 56.
All right.
Six yes.
Takes us to item 57, which is authorizing the city manager to negotiate preliminary terms of developer-initiated proposals for the purchase and redevelopment of 2 separate city-owned parcels for 2 projects in the East Village area. East 4th Street in Grand, and initiating a parking study of the affected area. Council Communication Number 13-567. Mr. Manager, do you want to highlight that particular proposal? Although we did go over it again this morning, but I think for the benefit of our citizens, we ought to at least highlight the proposal.
Mr. Mayor, council members, there are two separate parcels on this particular action. One is at the southeast corner of East 4th and East Grand. This is a proposal that would be, we would work with Heart of America Group, Mike Whalen, president, to do a boutique hotel on that site. The other side is southeast corner of East 5th and East Grand, with Christensen Development that wishes to pursue a development of a four-story mixed-use project with 9,000 square feet of street-level retail space and 36 market-rate apartments. So the process tonight is to authorize and direct staff to negotiate contracts with those two developers. It would be through the developer initiative process, which means at some point there would be a formal offering of those, at which point it would come back to council for a final decision after that.
Right.
Matt Anderson is here and has more details if anybody has questions further.
All right. Council, any comments, questions?
I'd be happy to move item 57. I think they're both great projects. And,
Okay, the item's been moved. I would ask anybody in the audience, is there anybody in the audience who has any comments they would like to make regarding any of these two developments? All right, Ms. Hensley's got a motion.
I'd like to comment. I think these are great projects. I think it's really going to keep moving the East Village forward. I'm really looking forward to this.
excellent.
6 yes.
All right, item 58 is review of the Zoning Board of Adjustment decision granting a variance to the required 75-foot separation from any church, school, public park, or licensed child care center to allow the use of 1,000 Thomas Beck Road as a restaurant with liquor, wine, and beer sales. The roll call contains alternative motions. Council Communication Number 13-556. Anybody here to speak to this item?
I'll move.
A, B, or C?
The recommendation.
That would be C.
C. Thank you.
You know, as these go forward, I keep getting real concerned about allowing this to happen, and we got rules and regulations out there to follow, and then they bypass them.
I understand what you're saying. I guess one of the issues when we make blanket rules are the unintended consequences it has on some of the buildings.
You're a no.
Yep.
Let's change it. Okay, go ahead. Four yes, 2 no.
All right, item 59 is review of the Zoning Board of Adjustment decision granting a variance of the required 150-foot separation from any church, school, public park, or licensed child care center to allow for the use of 501 Scott Avenue as a brewery with a retail and taproom components. Council roll call contains an alternative motion for a set of, and Council Communication Number 13-565. Anybody here to speak to this particular item at 501 Scott Avenue? All right, seeing none. Is there a motion on this one?
Move.
Item's been moved.
Which one are we doing, A, B, or C?
I'm trying to,
C.
the recommended one is, Roger?
C is the recommendation from,
Just saying the-
It's not on the printed agenda or
Yeah.
the internet.
The staff recommends the city council not remand the board's decision, and that would be option C. And then the decision of the board would become final on today's date.
Is that the motion, Chris?
Yes.
Four yes, two no.
all right. Under advice of council, the next items that we are going to discuss are hearings, and I believe that we cannot at this time, until 5 o'clock, is that correct?
That is correct.
Take them up, so we will take a quick recess till 4:59, and then we'll be right back.
guess what they're asking is that number 55 could be moved ahead of rice field.
What is this?
This is where they're purchasing that trailer court that the city owns.
Okay. Rats, I wish they could have done it when we amended the thing,
Yeah,
but,
I don't think it'll be controversial. There's nothing.
okay. All right, everybody, where's everybody? Need our manager and our attorney, where's it? Okay. All right, let's go ahead and open the hearings at 5:04. First item is 48I. There has been a request that one item be moved up after
Yeah, I think.
48-2, which is the conveyance. It's item 55. So if everybody's okay with that, we could, that's the Southeast 14th Street, I think, mobile home park. We could move that one up to right after this.
I think that's
because there's a couple items that may take a little longer. So if that's all right with everybody, we'll go ahead and do that. So the first item is 48I, which is items regarding property at 5035 Hubble Avenue, the Galinsky Family Real Estate LLC. This was continued from November 4th council meeting. A, under that, is to amend the Des Moines 2020 Community Character Plan to revise the existing future land designation from commercial auto-oriented small-scale strip development to planned business park. Property is owned by Homemakers Plaza, Inc. B is a hearing on the rezoning of the property from A1 agricultural to limited M1 light industrial. C is the first consideration of the ordinance above. And D is the final consideration of the ordinance above. The waiver is requested by the applicant and requires 6 votes. So, is there anybody in the audience to speak on item 48-1? Is the proposer here?
I'm Gary Galinsky, 3501 Aspen Drive. This is a joint project between my family and Jared Johnson. Jared is in Arizona right now and couldn't be here. So I'm going to show you what we're doing.
Mr. Coleman, would you help him get
Yeah.
kind of situated over there?
Oh, over here. Okay.
Which one you want to start?
I can start with the front of the building.
Okay, right here?
Yeah, yes. That is what it's going to look like. However, in the beginning, we were going to knock down, over half of the building, but we've decided to knock down 26,000 square feet. So it'll look like this, only there'll be another section that looks identical to that. These are steel panels. This is a granite here, and it'll have some stainless panels on it. So I just did a building on East University, and it'll be similar to that.
So people understand the scale. Is this a door?
Yes, right, that's the walk-in area. And then the parking, of course, in front. Sure, yeah, this is what it looks like without the drawings. So this is actually what the front of the building will look like when we're done. Then we're going to actually turn it into 4 buildings, one 20,000 square foot building, one 16,000 square foot building, one 8,000 square foot building, and one 7,000 square foot building. This is the area we're going to knock down right in here. So there'll be access to these buildings. Oh, sorry. Okay. And this again this is building A, which is building B. Building C. fences. So that is basically what we're doing. What we're asking for, we have one prospective tenant that is a fencing company here in Des Moines, and I took this off the assessor's page, and I can show you what we're asking for. If this is the, okay, oh. Okay. So this is the, we're gonna remove a section here, and this section here, that's the 26,000 square feet we're gonna take out. What we were asking for is there's approximately an acre or right in that general area. We were gonna put a fence here, even with the neighbor's building, go back to the south and fence that section, because this company that's currently on Delaware has asked us that they need outside storage. And then there will be a 100-foot barrier, because there's trees here, of which we're going to leave these trees here. So there'll be a fence, then 100-foot of trees before it, connects to the neighbor's property.
Gary, do you own that area between the east side of your building and the self-storage?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Gary, so most of the work in this particular property will all be inside?
Correct.
So
Well, in the front of the building, and then the inside of the buildings.
Okay. So not a lot of stuff laying around outside or
No.
outside storage? Okay.
Well, you mean as far as us doing the work on the building?
Well, you said there's anticipated that there's let's say a small manufacturer or something?
No, it's actually that American fencing company.
Okay, so
They're actually a big fencing company, but they need to store, they're doing it currently over on Delaware. That's where they operate out of. And then but they need to store their supplies outside.
Okay.
And there was a lot of restrictions put on, and Gary agreed to all of them, except for originally they had no outside storage, if I understand this right, or Mike can correct me too. But now they had an opposition from Hubble, and I talked with Steve Neighbor, and he said if it's screened properly, then they would not have a problem with that. But I don't know if somebody from here, Hubble's here tonight or not, but Mike can clarify it more than what I can give you the information.
Yeah, there were about 150 stipulations, I'd guess, on that sheet. There was 2 or 3 pages, and we didn't have a problem with any of them. And we may not have a problem, but it limits what we can do, which that would make it a lot easier on us if we had this one tenant right off the bat. So.
Okay.
And it'd be nice to retain that tenant here in Des Moines, but
Right.
he needs to go somewhere.
Well, they actually look west, but they prefer to stay in Des Moines. So.
Well, we always prefer that
like
they
that.
stay in.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Mike, you quickly want to address anything?
Mayor, County members of the council, Michael Ludwig, City Planning Administrator. Just very quickly, this is a rezoning item, and the Plan and Zoning Commission recommendation and staff recommendation was for no outdoor storage on the property. Mr. Galinsky did not agree to that condition. He submitted a revised letter of acceptance of zoning conditions, and he's proposed in that to have outdoor storage, but and it can't be stacked any higher than the perimeter fencing. It's my understanding that Hubble was acceptable to that condition, provided that there was no visible storage from their property. And so on this map of consent, Hubble owns this parcel right here that I crosshatched, but the adjoining property owner, which is a storage unit facility, still owns 20% of the adjoining property and is still opposed to the rezoning. So to approve the zoning with the amended conditions requires a 6/7 vote of the council. Thank you.
And in reading that, I think the storage area said he always thought he'd like to expand there. So I think he'd like to keep his eye on that, make that land available, so that at some point in time, if he was able, he'd go ahead with it. But
There was a letter in the packet from the adjoining property owner.
Okay. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to make any comments on this item? Sir, step up.
Mayor County and members of the council, I'm Dave Mershman, president of Homemakers Furniture. And 39 years ago, our family started our business at that same location. And for the last 4 years, it has been vacant. We simply outgrew the facility, and we had to expand our facility in Urbandale. But for 35 years, that location was very successful for our family. And I wish the Galinsky family and their employees much success. It appears from what the drawings that he has shown to us, it appears to be a good-looking proposal that they're putting together. It is a vacant building at this time, and of course, no one likes to see a vacant building, a white elephant, you know, in any city. But it appears to be a good-looking project. So I wish them all the best.
Thanks. All right.
Thank you.
Dave, thank you. Seeing no one else, let's go ahead and close the hearing. Do we have a motion?
I will move 48I, A, B, C, and D.
Six yes.
All right. Gary, move forward. And thanks for coming back down. Item 48-2, or II, on the vacation of portions of Court Avenue and 4th Street rights-of-way adjoining the Randolph Apartments at 202 4th Street, and the conveyance of an easement upon such vacated rights-of-way to legalize the existing building encroachments. A is the first consideration of the ordinance above, and B is the final consideration of the ordinance, and the waiver is requested by the applicant and requires 6 votes. Anybody in the audience to speak on this? Essentially around the Randolph Apartments.
I'll move item 48, Roman numeral 2, A and B.
Six yes.
We're quickly, as mentioned earlier, going to take up item 55, which is on the conveyance of 4315 Southeast 14th Street to Yater Village LLLP for $210,000. Council Communication number 13-551. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? Yes, sir.
Mayor, members of the council, Jim Bollard, 4007 Southeast 26th Street, chairman of Cessna. This is a property we've been working on for quite some period of time with former council member Meyer. My concern here is that the money that the city will get from the sale of the property continues to go into some sort of a land bank fund or something, so we can continue to look at properties on the south side that need to be revitalized. That was kind of the initial discussion with this, and I'm hoping that's still where we're at. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Can you respond to that?
Address that, Mr. Manager?
Mr. Mayor, council members, that is one of the talking points that we had with Mr. Meyer. The idea was to establish these proceeds as sort of a revolving account that could be used for other land acquisitions in this particular area of the city. My suggestion to you, if that idea is appealing to the council, I'd ask you to direct me to come back to you with a written policy to that effect and have it available for your review so you see the detail of how we would manage that.
I guess my thought was that it was to be used for, when we say a land bank, that it would be used for similar type of projects, because you've got other trailer courts that need attention as well.
Yes, I believe it was for
Okay.
other redevelopment projects. I don't know that I would say it would only be for trailer parks, but for other redevelopment, economic development efforts. There are, I think, numerous examples around the city, particularly in this ward, where you have properties that you need to acquire for a variety of reasons to help the neighborhood, and it seems like this is an appropriate way to go forward with that. So, but that's my suggestion, is that if you can come back with a written policy, then you can see that, make sure that it's acceptable to you.
Didn't we have a land bank at one time when the city sold property? The money went into the land bank?
Mr. Moore, we did. It was relatively limited in terms of the way it was applied, so I don't think there's a huge amount of funds in it right now. This might be a restart of that kind of a strategy.
Rick, what about when we sell HUD properties? Is that, I see where that comes in, maybe two different divisions of the funds?
Mr. Mahaffey, you have deposited funds from the proceeds of different parcels back into the economic development account. I would mention the sale of the property here over in the east side that when that happened, you said put it back into the account. You used that to underwrite a project out in Ingersoll. So that sort of thing has happened, and that kind of flexibility I think is appropriate so long as the council maintains some jurisdiction over how that happens. I think you want to have some flexibility here in terms of how you do it within some broad parameters would be my suggestion.
I think it's good to get a policy, yeah.
I'd move item 55 with the caveat that the city manager come back with a specific recommendation on how we can reinvest this money and give us some guidelines on it.
Okay.
Call this a project funds or property funds? How did we acquire this?
Economic development.
Mr. Mayor, we had economic development funds that were in our account that we used to acquire the property.
Six yes.
All right. Takes us to item 49. Item 49 is on the request from Beaverdale Partners, LLC, for an amendment to the Rice Development Partners PUD conceptual plan for 3001 Beaver Avenue to revise the name to Beaverdale Cooperative Housing PUD and to allow development of a 3-story, 54-unit multifamily dwelling for senior living. All right. We'll go ahead and open it up and ask Mike Ludwig to make the first comments.
Mayor, County, and members of the council, Michael Ludwig, Planning Administrator for the City of Des Moines. Again, the subject property is located at the northeast corner of Beaver Avenue and Adams Avenue. It's the former Rice School site. The property was sold by the Des Moines Public School District to Beaverdale Partners, LLC on December 15th of 2010. So the property has been in private ownership for almost the last 3 years. Back in 2007, there was a concept plan approved in March of 2007 for the subject property. It included a maximum of 55 dwelling units and 15,000 square feet of commercial space. Commercial space was in the first levels of these two buildings on the corner of Adams and Beaver Avenue, and then there was a mix of multifamily units up above the commercial space, row houses, townhouses throughout. The final development plan was approved 6 months after that in September of 2007, and these were changed to basically condominium or row house by attached units, and there was some change in the overall layout of buildings on that final development plan. But before you tonight is a request to amend this concept plan with a new concept plan for the property. It is not a rezoning of the property. Under our code, it is a concept plan amendment. Briefly, to just show you what they are proposing, it is a single building on the site for 54 units. Its references senior living under our code. I believe it's housing for older persons as defined by basically Fair Housing Act. And so their proposal would be this would be limited to individuals essentially 55 years or older, or there are some exceptions under that provision, I believe, for disabled individuals. On this plan, obviously there were, on the previous plan, there were numerous units that were proposed along the perimeter of the site. This is just a single building. There's one access off of Adams Avenue and one access off of Beaver Avenue. Has a lower parking requirement than traditional single family because of the age restriction on the property. and it has significantly less traffic than the previously approved plan with not having the 15,000 square feet of commercial use. This is the map, response map that we have for property owners around this site. Just pointing out again, this is a concept plan amendment, and so while there is significant opposition from surrounding property owners within 250 feet, this request does not trigger a 6/7 vote of the City Council. That applies on rezonings of property and not to concept plan amendments. So I'm available if you have any questions. Thank you.
Any questions? Anybody? All right. Stay available. Mike, we may have some questions. I'll ask the proposer if they would step forward at this time.
Mr. Mayor, Council, Josh Kalman with the Ewing Development out of Pella, Iowa, 909 West 16th Street. I'm going to load our quick presentation here. Can we get the computer started? Great, thank you. Just briefly want to talk about a few items here, but tonight your team here was myself and Shauna Schmal with Ewing Development. We also have Eric Cannon with Snyder & Associates and Roger Johnson with JSSH Architects. Here to answer questions that may come up. A little bit about Ewing Development. We're a real estate development company. We've been doing real estate development for just about 10 years. Throughout that time, senior housing has always been our focus. We are passionate about seniors. That stems from kind of our history. So our founder, Jeff Ewing, who couldn't be here tonight, his grandfather was paralyzed at the age of 38 years old. They're from southern Iowa, and so he lived in a nursing home with a couple of roommates, some tiled floors separated by a curtain. And so that was kind of how Jeff remembers visiting his grandpa, with grandma going home every night back to the farmstead alone. And so after about a 10-year banking career, he left that to develop senior housing where his grandparents could have stayed together. And so that's his heart that's been passed on to every single one of our employees, and is something that we try and look at every single project that we do to try and improve what we do, learn something new every time. As part of that, I'll get into the cooperative concept here a little bit more specifically, but just over the recent years, we started to do senior cooperative development. We've always done market rate rent projects with some success. We felt like we did a good job, but until we toured these senior cooperatives, we really didn't understand what we were missing. And it's that ownership piece, which I'll get into here briefly. So what is a senior housing cooperative? A housing cooperative is a joint ownership in a housing development in which members own a share. Members or share owners are part of the cooperative corporation, which owns the building, land, and common areas. The cooperative structure brings back the spirit of community and sociability. Democratic governance of the participatory nature of the cooperative contributes to healthy living and enhances the lives of its members. Some of the community benefits of a cooperative. The seniors remain to anchor the community's economic, social, and intergenerational foundations. Seniors' financial resources and contributions are retained. The resale of homes creates a ripple effect in the area, frees up affordable housing alternatives for younger families and first-time homebuyers. And then cooperatives do pay full real estate taxes and create employment opportunities. So on the member side, why a cooperative? Members, as I said, remain in control at a time of life when most other alternatives require sacrifice and control. They preserve their equity. A popular model in Iowa is the buy-in model, where a senior may stay there for 5, 6, 7 years, and at that time when they move on, only 50% of that asset comes back. With a co-op, they actually own a share in this cooperative company and can actually realize that appreciation when they move on. They don't pay for services they don't want or need. They enjoy improved health through daily participation in a community energized by governance, social activities, and development of new friendships. So now we kind of get to some of the PUD amendment that we're here to talk about tonight. We held a couple unofficial meetings as well as an official meeting. to talk about some of the concerns we've heard with the existing PUD that's in place that we're here to amend tonight. And so a number of items that we have addressed from some of the concerns we've heard in terms of saving the existing trees at Beaver and Adams. We are doing that, as well as trees throughout the site, as well as adding a lot of those as well, allowing for much more green space and a lot less paved area than the existing PUD, and reducing the concern that we heard in terms of density and commercial use and potential vacancy on that commercial property. It reduces the concern about increased traffic and noise. This is an independent standalone project, and so these are individual kitchens, and so there's not going to be semi-trucks coming in and out of this and adding traffic there on Beaver Avenue. And again, it addresses the stormwater issues without a request for financial investment from the city of Des Moines and its taxpayers. That's a project that we have agreed to do without any help there from the taxpayers. And again, the letter that I submitted to the council tonight addressing how we have accepted, all of P&Z's comments and recommendations as part of the approval of the project. And the letter addresses those one by one in terms of things that have come up since the planning and zoning. This shows a quick picture of the existing PUD married next to the project that we're proposing in terms of the amount of green space and less parking. So it's a 3-story building with underground parking. So a lot of those spaces are enclosed underneath the building there, as well as the trash chute. So there'll be no trash chute out on the site. That is housed inside of the underground parking garage. This is an artist rendering here of kind of the overlay site plan. And the revised front and rear elevations, this also came out of the Planning and Zoning Commission in terms of the amount of hard surface. As I mentioned at Plan and Zoning, we want to look like we belong and also like we've been there. And so this is something we took great care in looking into, the type of brick that we've used on the property. This is actually the elevation along Beaver Avenue. There were some comments about where's the back of the building, and that's the beauty of kind of the building sitting up along Beaver and kind of an urban type development is addressing that. So there really is no back of the building. The entire building is going to look very nice. This rendering kind of shows you the amount of brick, and we're using a historic looking brick as our architect has spent significant time down here looking at the homes in the area, and so we want to really make that a focal point, and we've chosen a brick that comes out of Iowa, up in Sioux City, I believe. And so that was something that we took great care in researching there. With that, I will turn it over to Eric Cannon with Snyder here to address some of the site plan comments.
Members of the council, Eric Cannon, 2727 Southwest Snyder Boulevard. Civil engineer on the project representing Snyder and Associates in Ewing Development. One of the major components that came out of both our preliminary neighborhood meeting as well as the official one and discussions with staff was concern with respect to stormwater in the area. There currently isn't any public storm sewer along Wallace Lane or along Ashby. The nearest storm sewer is clear up in the northeast corner of this picture on 40th Place. Part of the development that we initially identified as an issue is the fact that when you do development, you have to reduce the amount of stormwater that currently leaves the site today. And so part of that challenge was trying to find storm sewer within the vicinity to be able to make that improvement and provide that stormwater mitigation. So we identified the fact that the nearest storm sewer was clear up there, how we were going to get it there, and as part of the project, the developer has willingly committed to making a vast improvement to the vicinity of the project in the neighborhood and putting in public storm sewer on 40th Place, on Ashby and Wallace Lane, and running it all the way to the site. So it'll consist of intakes in the street where there are none today, providing stormwater relief to this area and helping to decrease the amount of runoff coming from the site with respect to the fact that we will be doing stormwater detention on the property, and we've made a vast reduction in the green space to the site from the previous PUD. So I think that's a very important thing to note with the development, and I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have.
Yep, just happy to answer any questions you have of us.
Is that all you got?
Yes.
Okay.
Any questions at this time?
I might have some more in a little bit, but I'm okay for now.
I think you can step away. We've heard from our staff, we've heard from the developer. This is a public hearing. It's kind of customary for us to get an idea of how many people intend to speak as part of this process. If you could raise your hands up, because we want to allocate time to people. Given the number of hands going up, I assume there's some people speaking for a group. We'll negotiate that, how much time you need separately then. But let's generally line up over here so we have an idea of who all is speaking, and we'll take it in order. And thank you. Bruce. Give just a second. This is all the people that want to speak on this issue.
Mayor Pro Tem, I believe there was some conversation that one of the speakers, and I'm not sure who's speaking on behalf of the group, is going to have a more lengthy presentation.
On behalf of, yeah.
15 minutes or thereabouts.
Bruce?
Right, I'm speaking for, Ginny, you're on the list too, right? I'm speaking for you, right?
Yeah.
Okay, 18 people.
Okay, so how long have you had?
I need about 25 minutes.
Okay, well, I know you're speaking on behalf of a lot of people, and if it's all right with the council, we normally give 5 minutes per person, but we'll allow you to speak the 25 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
And just for your benefit, we'll have Diane keep track a little bit and let you know when there's about 5 minutes left. And everybody else would have 5 minutes to speak.
We have the overhead, I have pictures.
Yep, so anybody that has pictures or anything to add, you can set that down there. The AV guy moved from his seat over to here, so you're here on your own. That's me. And if you could put that just in the middle of that document folder. Yeah. So when we're ready, Laura and Diane will make sure that's good. So please introduce yourself with your name.
My name is Bruce Butler. I live at 2420 Beaver Avenue, Des Moines, Iowa. I'd like to offer into the record a written version of my remarks.
Okay.
And I'll give that to the clerk, and I have copies for everybody else. And,
Councilman Grease has moved to receive and file. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? Your comments have been recorded.
I also have a online petition and a circulated petition that we would like to offer for the record to be placed.
It's also been moved that we receive and file the petitions. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, the motion passes. We've received them.
Mr. Chair, I have one procedural issue that I need to address, and that I believe I understood Mr. Ludwig to say that he thought that the vote of the council needed only to be a majority. I think that was the opinion of the staff. It's my opinion that there has to be 3/4 vote of the council, because this is a change in a PUD. It's a change in zoning regulation. Now, the Des Moines City ordinance, which is 134-700, does say that you only need 3/4 vote when you have either a non-recommendation out of the Plan and Zoning Commission, or you have an increase in density. However, the state statute says that if you're making a change, you have to have 3/4 vote. So I think we need to make sure that we're on the same, it'd be unfortunate if we went on a petition for certiorari on a technical matter rather than a substantive matter. So
when the speakers are done, I'll ask our counselor to make comment on that subject.
I beg your pardon?
I'll ask our city attorney to make comment on that when you're done.
When I'm done, all right. Then to proceed, if 600 yard signs and 490 signatures and the estimate survey of 75% of Beaverdale community is any indication, I represent the the Friends of Rice Field, and that those people would come under our umbrella. Some of the comments made by council members in session as well as out of session indicate that it might be useful for a moment to review the basic principles of zoning law before coming to the conclusion about Rice Field. We've heard, for example, that a private landowner should be able to develop his property as he likes, presumably as long as it's not physically injurious to the community. And we've heard that, that the comprehensive plan has no teeth, and we've heard it widely said that Rice Field has been sold and the development is a done deal. First, I'll address those who are concerned with insulating a landowner's property interest from zoning, which does not directly affect physical health and safety of the community. The seminal case holding that zoning, as is a legitimate exercise of police powers, of course, the Village of Euclid, Ohio versus Ambler Realty, 272 U.S. Reports 365. The most often quoted definition of police powers is by Judge Cooley in his famous work, Constitutional Limitations, 7th edition on page 245, and is cited ad infinitum by state and federal courts. Police powers are described by Judge Cooley as the power to establish rules to prevent a conflict of rights, and that's what we're talking about here, is a conflict of rights. For those who believe that once a property has come into private hands, the owner ought to be allowed to reasonably develop the property to its highest use, and that reasonableness consists of balancing the developer's interests with those of the community, considered as our Supreme Court's most recent decision in Molo Oil versus the City of Dubuque, 692 Northwest 2nd, 686, 2005, and I quote, "A zoning ordinance is only valid if it has any real substantial relationship to the public health, comfort, safety, and welfare, including the maintenance of property value. A property owner does not have a vested right in a particular zoning classification. In reviewing an ordinance, we are predominantly concerned with the general purpose of the ordinance and not any hardship that may result in an individual case. To the extent that the balancing test, this is the court saying, to the extent that the balancing test used in a previous case, Ulner, Tools and Die versus Dubuque, is inconsistent, we overrule it. Zoning is an exercise of police powers in the interest of the public peace, order, moral safety, comfort, convenience, and general welfare, and we do not balance between public and private interests. Every case where the Iowa Supreme Court has considered a PUD, whether it is spot zoning, the court has found that it is spot zoning. However, the court has gone on to say that spot zoning, although disfavored, is only illegal if it violates the comprehensive plan. The principal use of zoning laws during the 20th century have been expanded from health and safety to protect residential housing. The experience began to define what zoning is, and the rationale for zoning typically offered by economics literature is that some activities cause spillover effects on their neighbors and devalue their properties. The best way to deal with these is to employ the police power of regulation to separate uses. The modern economic theory, however, indicates that zoning is only partially about protecting individual properties. Owners, against the effects of spillovers or negative externalities, and adversely affects the market values of the properties. These economists argue that zoning protects what they term as a homeowner's consumer surplus in the home or in the surrounding neighborhood. Another term that they use for that is the protected interest is public commons or neighborhood commons. What this is about is that neighborhoods are not just made up of individual parcels, but include the collective resources comprising the neighborhood commons. Neighborhood commons are the features which, taken together, make up the character of the neighborhood. The purchaser of residential property in an urban neighborhood buys not only the particular parcel of real estate, but also a share in the neighborhood commons. Typically, the differences in the neighborhood commons play a crucial role in the decision to purchase a particular parcel. An example of neighborhood commons are streets, sidewalks, playgrounds, libraries, public schools, bistros, restaurants, nightclubs, theaters, retail establishments, churches, synagogues, and on and on. Also, the architectural and physical environment and the neighborhood character, construction character. Zoning gives the current neighborhood residents a kind of prior appropriation over the neighborhood commons. This right trumps the right of property owners to use their land in ways that interfere with or are inconsistent with current uses of the neighborhood commons. Developments may proceed as long as they are either consistent with the uses of the neighborhood commons or in ways the neighborhood has agreed in advance through the political process. This protects the expectations of the neighborhood residents. Piecemeal devaluation of the community character is extremely difficult to protect against. The proposed development is disruptive of the neighborhood's character because it is inconsistent with the commons, namely changes in density as well as a shift from single residential to apartment buildings. If Rice Field is allowed to be developed according to the proposed plan, the homeowners in Beaverdale are forced to bear the cost of the loss to the consumer surplus in the neighborhood commons. The neighborhood will become less stable. Homeowners fearing potential risks will have a reduced incentive to invest in their homes in the neighborhood and greater incentive to move to areas where they perceive the risks of unwelcome development to be lower. Protection from this loss justifies the exercising of zoning restrictions upon an individual landowner. Neighborhood residents, not planners or elected officials, are in the best position to evaluate their own consumer surplus in their homes and in their neighborhoods. At the beginning of this process to consider the future of Rice Field, the Des Moines School District designated Rice as parkland until it might be needed as a school, and the demographic projections were that this neighborhood would need a school in this particular decade. Anyone with an eye to Monroe School's enrollment knows that that time has come. Again, I refer you to the Espin survey where 67% of the owners of Beaverdale wanted the green space left alone, and 75% would prefer to have a enhanced green space. And I'll show you two drawings that were given to the neighborhood when they were considering it. The first is what leaving it alone would be, and the second, what that was shown to the neighborhood, is the community gathering area. At the public meeting at Hoover High School to consider the proposed development during the first go-around, the Ewing plan received no votes. They were not invited to make a presentation because the community overwhelmingly rejected senior housing for the use of the property. Rice Field itself is a vital neighborhood common with a value far greater than the purchase price of the lot. On page 22 of the Des Moines Community Comprehensive Plan, Beaverdale is cited as an example of a highly imageable and memorable neighborhoods due to its strong organization and continuity of elements. Des Moines Comprehensive Plan attempted to reflect our community's desire to protect the extraordinary value of Rice Field to the neighborhood by identifying it as residential properties and its residential properties surrounding in a sort of a super protected zone. On page 40 of the Des Moines Comprehensive Plan, there is a map of residential protective corridors. The area this development lies in is a protected corridor south of Douglas and in the northern and the southern boundary of the commercial area. On page 66 of the Des Moines Comprehensive Plan, the states that low-density use designation and single-family zoning classification is appropriate where under 25% of the housing stock has been converted to duplex and fewer than 40% is multifamily. The 2000 City of Des Moines statistical survey shows that Beaverdale is 75% owner-occupied and 22% renters, and of that 22% includes single-family housing. So on that basis alone, these statistics require single-family development under the comprehensive plan. We appeared before this body previously in opposition to the last request for zoning to planned unit development mixed use. In a nutshell, our argument was that this portion of Beaver Avenue is designated a residential protective and should be restricted to R1 infill. We prevailed at Plan and Zone Commission, so the developer changed his argument, and when the issue came before this council, the developer argued that their development was a community in itself, a village within a village, so to speak, and contained important features of the comprehensive plan for residential neighborhoods. It had an R1 appearance in some of the housing in addition to the row housing. It had mixed use to serve its little community. It was welcoming to the greater community to make use of it through retail shopping. It had an area designated as a park-like gathering area for public use, and the developer's revised argument met with approval of this council. So if we take this council and the developer at their word, the brightest minds in the architecture community and the neighborhood organizations and the business coalition and the Des Moines schools and the city planners, the sole justification for the appropriateness of the Beaverdale neighborhood of the PUD is that it was an exemplary demonstration of the principles of the Des Moines Comprehensive Plan in a microcosm. The current proposal for amending the PUD completely abandons the microcosm example for an ideal community for single use and no right or privilege of public access whatsoever. And this type of housing, and further, this type of housing is not needed. Only 5% of our elderly leave their homes. And the gerontologists tell us that of those 5%, the ones that leave the home usually have physical or mental disabilities or deterioration that they need services. This cooperative offers no services to their residents whatsoever. The housing has been touted as affordable, $90,000 up front, $1,100 a month. This is a very interesting use of the term affordable. One must consider whether risking $90,000 on a cooperative is a prudent way for the elderly to conserve their resources and prepare themselves for their finances, for their health, if their health takes a turn for the worst. We have a plethora of empty senior housing in Beaverdale. These, quote, senior housings, unquote, units are going vacant and taking on young families because they cannot attract seniors. These developments do not have the same appropriate amenities for children, and they will only add to juvenile problems that we have experienced when we don't provide for our children. You know, I'm reminded of The Music Man, when Harold Hill is on the train and the salesman says, "How far are you going, friend?" And Harold Hill says, "Wherever the people are green as the money, friend." Ewing touts this cooperative as a new form of home ownership for seniors, but it's not new to the city of Des Moines. Heather Manor was originally a cooperative, and it went bankrupt, and the seniors lost all of their equity. To appreciate the pitfalls of cooperatives, one must understand some of the legal technicalities. Cooperative apartments are a form of ownership in which a corporation owns the building and land with a single mortgage. Residents own shares in the corporation. The shares usually are tied to a specific dwelling. Almost uniformly, the corporation carries the mortgage for most of the appraised value of the real estate. The individual resident purchaser pays an upfront fee, in this case $90,000 for a one-bedroom, somewhere above $140,000 for a larger place, and the resident also pays a monthly fee, the beginning fee for the Beaverdale project, $1,100 a month. At least this was what was expressed by the developer based upon its Ankeny development. Now, depending upon the extent of greed present, most or all of the upfront money goes to the developer, and the monthly payments go to pay the full mortgage. The developer takes his money and he runs. The cooperative is left to the residents and the owners to operate, and they often hire a manager to collect fees. Now, serious problems arise when too many shareholders' monthly fees go unpaid, and age has a unique way of causing attrition of residents. Suppose a resident owner requires immediate nursing care. One would need an awful lot of money to pay both their $1,100 a month bill for the cooperative and nursing care at a nursing home. How difficult is it to find a buyer for senior apartment? Well, ask Gail Nearson, who was still unable to sell her mother's unit at the Lodge of Atchworth 5 years after her mother's death. You can see that in the Des Moines Register, August 3rd, 2013, Reader's Watchdog, Buyer Beware. For whatever reason, if it's insufficient funds are collected, mortgage payments and taxes go unpaid, the mortgage company may then foreclose against the cooperative, and the owner-resident lose their equity, their ownership, and their residence. The plethora of signs indicating vacant senior dwellings along Beaver Avenue should give the target demographic pause to carefully consider the merits of the latest in modern living purveyed by this Ewing development. If the default rate of the payment of monthly fees is not serious enough to cause a shortage of funds for the mortgage or tax payments, consider the plight of the hapless owner who is in default. As indicated, the resident owner does not own real estate. She or he owns stock in a corporation. This is an important distinction because the recourse against a security pledged to guarantee performance is governed by Article 9 of the Uniform Commercial Code, which provides a self-help remedy almost universally elected by creditors, by which the creditor gives notice to the debtor, and if the debtor fails to cure the unpaid fees, the creditor can go ahead and auction the security. And a creditor auction is not competitive, and the odds are the shareholder in default will lose most, if not all, of their upfront money. To give Ewing its due, there are two features of the proposal which might ameliorate some of the harsh scenarios I've described. First, according to Ewing, spokesman at a recent meeting in Beaverdale, the cooperative bylaws will empower the corporation to veto a sale for only a period of up to 2 months, not completely block the sale as traditionally seen in cooperative housings. Accordingly, a shareholder may be able to sell his or her share at a loss, but you must consider what that devaluation does to the other units. Second, Ewing purports to be selling these units at half their value. The developer implies that this makes the investment a sure bet, but value is the merger between what a willing buyer will pay and a willing seller will accept. Does anyone really believe that 50% off sale is a reduction in fair market value? And Ewing Development spokesman misled his audience when addressing the possibility of foreclosure by stating that the insured mortgage would be restructured. Restructure is a term applied in New York City to converting cooperatives into rentals after foreclosure. How likely it is that seniors could lose everything in a failed cooperative? Just ask the children and grandchildren of those parents and grandparents who were resident owners of Heather Manor, which was a cooperative, at least it began as a cooperative, before it went into bankruptcy, and they lost all of their equity. Do not place your elderly citizens at risk by allowing this inappropriate get-rich scheme for the developer to come into Des Moines and take advantage of your citizens. Just to quote the Music Man, anything these Iowa people don't have already, they can do without. The last issue I have is the failure of the City of Des Moines to follow its ordinance 134-708, which required after a year that if the original developer did not undertake construction of the development, that a remedy should be taken to cure the situation, including, which can include returning the parcel back to R160, its original designation. The Rice Development Partners pulled out on 20 August 2008. And according to the city ordinance, this council should have taken it under consideration, and we would have urged it to return the parcel to R160. And therefore, we urge the council to deny the change in zoning, and we also request the council vacate the PUD under 134-708 and return the property to R160. Are there any questions?
Questions? I forecasted that I would like, I'd like our legal team to respond.
Roger Brown from my office has been working on this, and he can address a couple of important issues. Obviously, with all due respect, and appreciate the earnestness with which council has set forth his opinion, but that's not the opinion shared by your legal department staff. We don't think that's correct. It's also not the opinion shared by the Iowa Supreme Court, and Roger can explain that further.
Thank you. Bruce, do you cede the microphone to Roger Brown, our attorney?
Members of the council, my name is Roger Brown. I'm Assistant City Attorney with the Legal Department. I would like to start by addressing the supermajority vote requirement. There is a provision in the Iowa Code 414.5 that the prior speaker has referenced that applies to rezonings that I think you're very familiar with, that in the event of a sufficient protest, it's not possible to approve that rezoning without a 6/7 vote of this council. This is not a rezoning of property, and 414.5 does not apply to this case. The application of that provision of the Iowa Code when considering a conceptual plan or a development plan under a zoning ordinance like the City of Des Moines was addressed by the Iowa Supreme Court in a case out of Cedar Rapids, Kane versus Cedar Rapids. In that situation, the City of Cedar Rapids, like Des Moines, had rezoned the property and then had a plan for its development that was approved by resolution. As in this case, we have a existing PUD concept plan that was approved by resolution. In that case, the plan got amended several times, but it was the third plan that was challenged in the Cedar Rapids case. And as in here, the opponents of that action, the approval of that third plan, argued that it was invalid because there was a sufficient protest and it was not approved by a supermajority. The Iowa Supreme Court reviewed the history of that section of the code, and its conclusions are, I think, directly on point. The city's provisions allowing approval of revised site plan by resolution can be harmonized with Iowa Code Section 414.5. We conclude that Iowa Code Section 414.5 does not require a 3/4 supermajority of the members of the council to approve a revised site plan. In its terminology of revised site plan is referenced earlier in the case of a development plan in a situation similar to what we have here. We call the document in front of you a conceptual plan, but conceptual plan here is, I think, very comparable with the development plan in the Cedar Rapids case. For that reason, we're very confident that the approval of an amended PUD conceptual plan by resolution of this council may be made by a simple majority of quorum.
Thank you. Any questions for Jeff or Roger?
I have a couple of questions.
Thank you.
Roger, could you go back and address the comment that was made regarding the city ordinance issue that it should have reverted back to R160 based upon what had been passed in that original ordinance?
The Des Moines PU district regulations provide that if a development does not occur within a period of years, it should be looked at to consider if rezoning it back to the prior district or what other remedies might be appropriate. It's not a mandate that it be rezoned. It's a directive language that you should reconsider it. Now, I asked Mike Ludwig, I'll put him on the spot here. I believe the Planning and Zoning Commission did consider what to do. Perhaps you could give a little history on that.
Councilmember Coleman and members of the council, the original PUD, as I stated, was approved in 2007. The first provision of the code talks about there being a 2-year time period for a final development plan to be submitted. In this instance, there was a final development plan submitted 6 months after the concept plan was originally approved. That development plan was approved in September of 2007. In the intervening time after that, there was a lawsuit filed against the school district over the sale of the property. There were conditions on the final development plan which stated that no development could occur. There were conditions placed by the council that said no development could occur until there was an agreement on the installation of sewer to serve the property. And there was no such agreement ever reached. And based on the lawsuits, the previous developer, estate issues, as well as the resale of the property did not change hands until until December 15th of 2010. So no development would have occurred until there was a clean title transferred of a property, and an agreement on the sewer still did not exist at that time. So even if you took a 2-year time frame from the time the property transferred, that was essentially December of last year. We have numerous PUDs in the city that are much older than a year or 6 years, for that matter, from their initial approval that are still on the books. The city has never taken an action that I'm aware of to void any of those previously approved PUDs. As a matter of fact, there was one that was the Hillside PUD in downtown, which is where Principal now has parking lots. That PUD was in place for residential and commercial development on that property for probably 20 plus years, never undertaken, and ultimately was amended for the parking lots that now exist for Principal. So from staff's perspective, the Planning Commission did raise the question about the review, but given all of the issues with the ownership, the change of ownership, it was deemed that they did not want to take any further action on the item, and that was their direction. I'm available if you have additional questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you give me the date that staff recommended that they review that PUD?
It was, I'd have to go back through the file. It was in the letter that I believe you received from the Plan and Zoning Commission. That date was discussed in that communication. And if you can give me a few minutes, I can find that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Margaret Felk. I live at 2400 Hickman Road. I'm an old Byron Rice student of Rice. I'm here for the kids because I've seen when they've gone kite flying, kickball, soccer, special ed, kids playing ball out there. Special Olympics have used that ground for their practice. And I don't think it should be used for an apartment house. Why can't they use Whitmer Park or one of the other parks around that aren't even being used? It's better to leave that ground alone as it is, because I went there. I'm proud of Rice. I'm glad what it stood for when it was there. But I was sad to see it go. But I just think it would be better off if you just left it the way it is so the kids can have their freedom to run and not having to worry about traffic, not having to worry about something going on there. And I just think it would be better being left just the way it is. Leave the kids, let them have their fun, let them have their kick soccer field, let them be able to fly kites and run. Don't tear it up for an apartment house. We've got too many now. You'll build new ones downtown and all over every place else. Please leave this for the kids. The kids deserve somewhere to run. Thank you.
Thank you. Pam?
My name is Pam Nagel. I live at 4045 Adams Avenue. I adjoin the property. I have the longest contiguous lot line with it. I would say that I too am sad that Rice isn't there anymore, but the reality is, it's not. The reality is, it's probably not going to be a park, because if it remains a park, no one will fix the plumbing. No one will fix the sewer. No one will fix the drainage. If nothing else would come out of this, it would be fixing something that should have been done by the city and the school district 100 years ago. It wasn't done then. Now we have an opportunity to have it taken care of and done. As to the fact that people think that there aren't that many old people, Hello, folks. We're all going to be there, sooner or later. Some of us sooner and some of us later. Some of us by choice and some not. I think this is an excellent property, an excellent idea for the property. I also believe that this is a developer who has the, rather than being a greedy person and a person picking the green, I think this is a developer who's doing it for the best reasons. I think they have a good track record. The quality products that they have done in the past stands for that. And by far, the fact that they want to save the trees, which I'm a certified nurseryman, and they want to fix the sewers and the sewer line, not just for their property, but for the people on Wallace and all of those streets who have a huge issue at no cost to the city, I think merits your approval. You're passing this amendment. I thank you. And I will also say I'm getting really tired of coming here about this property. I've lived there 23 years, and this has got to be at least my 20th time to come to the City Council or the P&Z or the Board of Adjustment. I would like to see something happen, because you know what? We're all going to grow old. We're all going to die. And I'd like to see something happen on this property to alleviate the sewage system and problems for the people on Wallace Lane and on down the line. Thank you.
Good evening, council members. My name is Vonnie Salem, and my husband and I have lived in Des Moines for almost all of the 50 years that we have been married. We've lived in Beaverdale and we've lived in Lower Beaver neighborhood, and we think both of them are excellent places to live. First of all, I represent only myself. I don't represent any group whatsoever. I don't represent Ewing Development. I'm just here to speak for myself. I love Des Moines. And secondly, I'm not against green. Who could be against green? We do have to say that there's Tower Park and there's Ashby Park and there's Beaverdale Park. But I'm not against anybody on either side of this issue. I think it's like two rights. It isn't a wrong and a right. It's two rights. It's right to have development in the city, and it's right to have green space. And so it's a matter of priorities. Which do you value more? And to me, the deciding factor is the advantage of development in Des Moines. I have a daughter in West Des Moines. I have a daughter in Ankeny. And I could move either place any day. But my husband and I choose Des Moines. We choose to live here, to shop here, to pay our taxes here. And I think that a lot of the people who hope to move to Vintage Park are in the same way. And we are not stupid. We are not stupid to think that we're going to throw our money away. We're a pretty conservative bunch, and we are not going to throw our money away. Ewing Development has suggested that we contact our lawyer and we contact our accountant before we sign any contract, and we will. We will. I mean, you look at my husband. I mean, he has about the first dollar he ever made, so he's not going to give it to Ewing Development. We have looked at several places in the city and out of the city, and this is the first one that has attracted us enough that we have made a small deposit to reserve our name. But that doesn't mean a whole lot. It's a very small deposit. And some of the things that were presented as liabilities, I consider an asset. This is not shabby housing. As the man said, we each need to come up with around $100,000 up front and pay more or less $1,200 a month. That is not shabby housing. That is an asset. That is an asset to Beaverdale. I don't know the numbers, but I would assume that this would be at least $5 million on the tax base. If you take 50 units times 100,000 apiece, wouldn't that be like $5 million on the tax base? And when I drive around the northwest side of Des Moines and I see the new housing, most of it is low-income housing. And I'm certainly in favor of that. I've worked on a committee for the homeless for 20 years. And I admire Anna Wim and Habitat for Humanity. But I think there should be some middle-income housing that is new and attractive so that we will want to stay in Des Moines. I don't like to see Des Moines go the way of some of the other large cities where the middle struggles and the suburbs thrive. I do not want that for Des Moines. That is not my vision of Des Moines. I think that having 50 to 75 seniors in Beaverdale would be an asset to the whole town, but particularly to Beaverdale. I look forward to walking to the shops, to the coffee shop, to the several restaurants. There's a barber shop and a dentist, and I look forward to being able to walk to all those things. And you have to remember, we are seniors. We are not going to drag race down Beaver Avenue. We are not going to throw our beer cans out the window. We are good citizens, and we want to stay in Des Moines in a place that pleases us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vonnie.
Good evening. I'm Kathy McGinn. I live at 4423 44th Place in Des Moines. And having not been born or raised in Des Moines, my roommates and I felt fortunate to have found Beaverdale and homes to rent. After marriage, Jim and I chose Beaverdale to raise our children and for them to be able to walk to school in this area. It's a special community known for its shops and its people. The annual Fall Festival, with its parade and a weekend of activities, attracts many from throughout the city to join in our fun. There's the Craft Boutique and the annual Christmas lights on Wallace Lane and Ashby that bring limousines and carloads of people to share in the holiday spirit. Ewing Development Plan offers to those loyal Beaverdale fans a chance to remain active in this community. By the year 2030, as the baby boomers generation reaches age 65, there will be approximately 70 million over 65. That's more than double the number in 1997. In closing, I'd like to share how fortunate we are to have in our area 6 parks with 67 acres of green space. Thank you.
Thank you.
That closes our public hearing. I had asked everybody to notify the council before we started. And seeing no objections, I'm going to close the public hearing and return the discussion to the council. Josh, we might have questions for you, but at this point, it's not your floor. Yeah, are there questions? I actually eventually have one for you, Josh, but maybe we'll start with others.
I do have some questions. Josh, I'd like you to maybe just address the co-op in a little bit more detail than you did in your initial presentation, specifically as it relates to individual mortgages. Just describe what the co-op looks for an individual investor, resident, what liabilities come with that, and walk through that. I might have more specific questions as you go.
So the first point to clarify would be the individual mortgages. There's actually only one master mortgage and one title. So there's not individual mortgages for each member. And so I guess that would be the first point to kind of clarify, and it's that one master mortgage that is HUD and FHA insured. And so there's no individual liability to the members there. And so some of the things that were shared earlier just are completely false. Our Indianola cooperative in Indianola, Iowa is the first true senior housing cooperative in central Iowa. Heather Manor was not a true senior housing cooperative. But to address that a little bit further, the share price gaining appreciation. Half of the monthly fees are tax deductible. And so, as I mentioned, some of those buy-in facilities, I believe the lodge at Ashworth was brought up in some of the comments, not a senior housing cooperative. That is one of the buy-in type communities. And so, in terms of the affordable piece, a senior housing cooperative is attractive to a senior who normally wouldn't consider those types of senior housing. So to call it affordable, in my opinion, is fair, because what they're going to be considering is a senior, or age restricted or not, a townhome, okay? And those aren't $100,000 type projects. Those are $200,000 and $300,000 projects. We have several people trying to move out of those upside down condos after 2008 and 2009 into a cooperative because of its affordability and the amenities that it still provides. And so we think we can say it's an affordable option because of those reasons, and a safe investment because it is, 40 to 50% of that home's value that they are putting in, while also realizing roughly a 3% appreciation per year on that investment in their cooperative share.
That does answer my question. Explain how the HUD-backed, FHA-backed mortgage protects a resident if they purchase a unit or share, and then over the course of time, the development isn't able to sustain. It ends up having a bunch of vacancies, a bunch of delinquencies on the monthly payments. How am I protected as an individual shareholder resident?
So to take it a little further, there's no individual liability on individual members. So if someone were to default, if one person or a couple people or whatever, however number of people default, when that unit sells, the cooperative stands in first lien position. So when those folks sell their unit, a portion of that fee is going to be retained to pay back those monthly fees that they haven't been paying. There's no individual liability to those members as they move on. That said, the cooperative concept, as I mentioned earlier, started in the late 70s in the Twin Cities area, and it's kind of grown from there. So there are 100 cooperatives in the nation. 92 of those are in Minnesota and Iowa. Where am I going with that? So on that point, restate the question again, if you could, Hallie.
You were talking about how they were started in Minnesota, presumably how they're secure.
Sure. Yep. And so there's that security built in terms of that FHA HUD insurance for that mortgage. There are projects up there. The first project at 7500 York in Edina, Minnesota has a 9-year waiting list. And so to kind of just qualify it as standard senior housing and throw out other projects that just aren't senior housing cooperatives as evidence of these failed projects just isn't fair to the senior housing cooperative. And so history kind of speaks for itself. There hasn't been a failed cooperative since 1978 when the concept started in the Twin Cities.
Okay, good. Interesting. In terms of your development, what's kind of your timeline? When do you plan on breaking ground? I know there's probably some reservation requirements with HUD before you can start building. Yep.
So HUD requires 60% pre-sales, and so that's kind of what I've shared throughout this process in our public meetings, as well as in our sales meetings, is just to share. We're not presuming any approvals. We hadn't been up to this point. We've been very honest with the individuals who have reserved with us. We're currently just under 50% reserved. And so the comment of there not being a need, that hasn't been founded either. And so we've been very honest. The HUD process takes time. This process also takes time. So we've been kind of running both processes at the same time. We like to get to around 80% reserved before we can move to the next phase, which is the subscription process, which is when people make that next commitment, because needs change, things change with folks. And so we need to be at 60% sold to start construction. That's where we're going towards now. It'd be my hope to be able to start construction come spring. There are some things that need done before then. We would need to do some soil borings on the site here in the near term in terms of, so the engineers can determine the types of footings, foundations, those types of things.
So spring would be your tentative?
Spring would be ideal, but again, the HUD process takes some time.
Understood.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Yeah, I'm interested in how they identify this as being one half. Was it the monthly fee is tax deductible, not the investment, the original investment, but and how does the government identify that as being acceptable as a deduction? Is it considered interest? Is it considered tax?
Yep, it's the mortgage interest and property tax. So not the full
combined of tax.
Correct. So it's not the full monthly fee. It's about just under, right around 50% of that monthly fee.
So if it's $1,200, $600,
sure. Yep.
It's $7,200 a year.
Yeah, right.
Can I just follow up on that then? We talked earlier today about the tax abatement. Okay, so we're saying that these properties would be, the co-ops would be eligible for tax abatement, and so that'd be the 5-year tax abatement? Is that what we're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Right. So basically, to clarify, in terms of the storm sewer project, the streetscape project, and just a project in general, we're seeking no TIF or financial investment from the
Right,
city or
right.
the taxpayers. The abatement piece, though, which is interesting, because I've heard from folks in our industry, in the development industry, that the new proposal and the way that you folks look at the abatement being so hard to kind of capture, we didn't find that at all. I mean, we've been able to do that with some ease, and so we've met those requirements of the new process that you guys have laid out. And so I don't know where that came from, but we were able to do that. And so that's the neat part, is that we're not that greedy developer. That tax abatement would roll directly to the cooperative members, not us as a developer. They're the ones paying their property taxes. So that tax abatement in other projects that would go to a developer who might say, oh, your process is too hard, we've met it, and it's not coming to us. It's going to the members of the cooperative.
And so the members of the cooperative then, just from legal's perspective, they would still have to apply individually. So all the 54 different co-ops would have to apply individually for the tax abatement. Is that correct?
I don't believe so.
Or does the developer actually apply for it? I just want to make sure I understand.
There would be one application for tax abatement for the building, because again, the building is all owned by the cooperative
By the
entity.
viewing, okay.
And that entity would apply for the tax abatement.
So that's why you're talking about passing it through then to the individual co-ops, okay.
So the building's not owned by Ewing, the building's owned by the cooperative, but there'd be one tax abatement, and then it would roll out everybody's pro rata share. So the folks in a 1,200 square foot unit versus the folks in a 1,400 square foot unit would have a different portion of that abatement, just based on the size of their unit. Yep.
And then just one last question, and this ties into, I think, both Ewing and the city manager. The sewer improvements that we're talking about, Ewing Development has agreed that you would do all of the sewer improvements, and I think the cost is around $300,000. Is that accurate? Close?
Roughly, yes.
Where was this at in our CIP? Is this an expense that we, the city, will be able to save? Is this?
Mrs. Hensley, council members, I can't tell you that these are funds that we had programmed into our budget, because they aren't at the present time. But it is an important project. We're happy that it's happening, and it seems to me this is the appropriate time and place. If the property is going to be developed, this is the best way to handle it as part of a development project. Now, the improvement itself would typically be handled as a three-party contract. In other words, it would ultimately end up being a city sewer, but the work would be done by the developer, but reviewed and approved by city engineering staff.
Thank you.
And this would not be accessible to any of the property owners?
Correct. It would be 100%
But you'd pay
developer.
for the entire project?
That's correct.
Whereas, that's an excellent point, Bob. Would some of this have been assessed to property owners had we moved forward with this? Or would it have been paid for with stormwater utility?
No, Mrs. Hensley, it likely would have not been assessed.
Okay.
Skip. Josh, I've been hearing that the future tenants will pay a large sum up front. I've also heard that you're going to have financing with HUD. I'm just curious to know what do you estimate the amount of skin Ewing Development's going to have in the game when that building is completed?
Yeah. So the cooperative is owned by the members. So we would act as the ongoing manager on that campus. We can be fired. So the way that it's set up is we have 1 year as part of the agreement to run the facility. In terms of skin in the game, it's a long process. So in terms of this pre-sale process, that's what we are funding. That's our skin in the game. HUD looks at us as kind of the sponsor of the project to get it ongoing, and they continue with their third-party oversights and many, many reviews of financials, our financials, the project plans, the budgets, the operational budgets for the cooperative in its first year of operations. And so it's that HUD oversight that keeps us involved in the project from start to completion.
May I ask you again, how much money do you estimate Ewing will invest in this project before completion?
Roughly $700,000 to lay out the money for a project to go through the marketing phase and construction phase to opening.
Do you have any idea what the value of the project will be upon completion?
Our Ankeny project, which was mentioned earlier, was roughly a $10 million project. I would foresee this one being just a little higher based on some of the development costs involved.
Thank you.
So primarily you act as a facilitator, administrator
right.
of the development. You're paying the initial capital for the sewer improvements, the development itself, and then management fees are your payment on the back end.
Correct.
And you've already purchased the land?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the carrying costs.
I'm going to suggest that we allow the questions to wrap up. I want to make sure that we're aware of staff, the manager's recommendation on it. Then I'd welcome a motion, and typically before we vote, people would have a chance to speak. And I know I have some things to say. Is there any other questions for Josh? Any questions for anybody else that spoke during the public hearing? Okay. Manager?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I want to make some general comments about the project, the recommendation that's before you, and then I have some general points I want to make. The first thing is that you have an affirmative recommendation from our professional planning staff to approve. There is in your packet and available to the public a letter that outlines, I think, 20-some conditions with subpoints. Mike Ludwig is here, and I'm sure could expound on all of those. You also have a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission to approve the project. There was extensive testimony this evening at the podium on legal issues. The city attorney and one of his assistants, Roger Brown, has addressed those issues at all. I'm not an attorney, as you know, so I'm not going to try to trade into that category, but I do trust the judgment and the wisdom that our city legal staff has brought forward. Just for the record, I concur in the staff recommendation and the P&Z recommendation to approve the project with the conditions that have been identified, but I do want to outline some additional points that I think are important to this decision tonight. The first one is that this is privately owned property. I know everybody knows that, but there's a key implication here. The fact that it's privately owned means that the owner of that property has some rights to develop the property in accord with zoning, building codes, and the normal building review process that the city has and other rules and regulations that might be from other jurisdictions. The city, through zoning, can't simply prohibit the development of the property. You couldn't say, in my view, that we're not going to zone it for anything, we're not going to approve a permit here. So the fact that it's privately owned, I think, creates an obligation that we have to review that property in accord with our rules and regulations and act accordingly, and to use our powers to completely restrict development of the property would not be appropriate. Second point that's sort of related to that is that the city does not have a need to acquire this property. And I know of no reason that would justify our acquisition in the future, given all of the priorities and needs that the city has today, that it's just not in the cards for us to move forward with it for a variety of reasons, but suffice it to say, we don't have a need for the property. The third point, and this was alluded to by a couple of the speakers, but I want to talk about this a little bit, and that is the need for this sort of housing in our community. Some of you might recall the presentation from Kent Sovereign, who's with the ARP Association, and the fact that Des Moines is an age-friendly city. Well, that whole notion is predicated on the fact, I think, as one of the speakers said, that when you look at demographics, the senior citizen population in our country, and certainly within Des Moines, is going to grow, particularly in the coming years as the baby boomer populations age. That's going to create an enormous demand for a certain kind of housing as folks who were living in a single-family home desire a home that has lesser day-to-day responsibilities. The kind of housing that's in this project could meet a portion of that need. And it does allow, and I think this is one of the objectives of the age-friendly movement, is to have housing that is for seniors within our community so that folks don't have to leave Des Moines to find a place to live. Now, clearly, you're going to have different income levels. You might be familiar with the Franklin Field project. That's maybe not exactly the term. It's a low-income tax credit project for seniors over on Franklin. my information of that project has been enormously successful. It meets a different market than this project is aimed at, but I think it exemplifies the fact that there is certainly a need for that kind of housing. The notion that you can have a home in Des Moines and you can move down the street in your same neighborhood and continue to live there, I think is attractive, and I think it's a wonderful opportunity that Des Moines and our neighborhoods can provide for folks in the future. The last thing, and this has been noted by a couple of the speakers and by comments from the council, this project has no cash incentives in the project, and as council knows full well, many of the projects that are built in Des Moines, particularly in this sort of way, are before you asking for some sort of assistance. You had elsewhere in the agenda projects that were getting home funds or low-income tax credit projects that are going through the IFA process with the state. There's no fronting cash in this deal. The fact that the developer is willing to take on sewer improvements is really quite a positive thing in my view, and it's not to be underestimated. There is tax abatement, but tax abatement, as you know, doesn't confer cash up front. So the fact that the developer is building the project, meeting our regulations, and providing the sewer improvements, in my view, is a very positive thing. So again, I concur in the recommendation to go forward. I know it's been a very difficult project in the neighborhood. All things considered, I believe the best decision is to approve the proposal that's before you tonight.
Thank you. Any other comments or motion before we, Allie?
This is a really tough issue for me. A little history. I actually had my campaign kickoff on Rice Field because I think it represented a lot of the problems with government and the inability for government to listen. And I think that's where a lot of the difficulty in this property comes from, is from its history. There's a nostalgia towards Rice Elementary. People went to school there, their kids played there. There were hard feelings when it was torn down. Since that time, more kids have played on that field. And there's been an attachment that's developed to it. Over the course of time, the school board owned it, the school board sold it. It's now owned by a private developer. I acknowledge that the private developer knew going in that the connotation that went with the property they were getting. But at this point, I am not prepared to infringe on their property rights to have the veto power as the government and say that they don't have the right to use the land in substantially the same form that they purchased it in terms of zoning. They're actually down, I understand it's not a rezoning from a legal standpoint, but they're actually reducing the density of what's currently present there. So from my standpoint, there's two factors that I don't think we have the option to consider. First, it's owned by a private developer, and as the government, I don't think we have the veto power to indefinitely say that development can't occur. The second is that it's currently zoned for development. So voting no tonight doesn't remove development. It doesn't remove the threat of development. It allows a higher density development, which Ewing has indicated they're not looking at, they're not interested in, but certainly could be down the road, and I think certainly would be developed down the road. I think this is an ideal piece of property in the heart of Beaverdale, and I think that's why you see the passion on both sides of this issue. I do want to commend everyone on both sides of this issue for their civility. We've had a lot of contentious issues on my time on the council. That was one of the most productive, constructive dialogues, conversations we've had. There weren't accusations, there wasn't name calling, and I appreciate that on both sides. So based on the project itself, which is what I think we're tasked with evaluating, I think this is a good project. I really do. Ewing has been genuine, has been open to listening. They've had several neighborhood meetings, some that I've attended, some that I haven't. And I think they went through a list of things that they've changed. They've been open to staff's recommendations in terms of the sewer, in terms of incorporating some of the Beaver Avenue streetscape elements into their plan. Their elevations have changed in terms of their building materials. They maintain some semblance of green space on the site. As the city manager noted, there's no financial incentives tied with this project, which is unheard of in my experience. They've complied with all the city conditions. The sewer upgrades, as I mentioned, are a huge benefit to that area in terms of infrastructure for particularly the property owners on Wallace and reaching northeast from there. So based on the project itself, I think this is a good project. The fact that they're already 50% reserved surprised me when I found that out this morning. And so I would be prepared to move the amendment to the concept plan, but I would be open for further discussion.
Well, let's take that as a motion to at least get the discussion started, and then people can respond to that or weigh in. I have a little change that I'd recommend to your motion, but I'll get to that in a minute. Anybody else want to speak? The mayor usually goes one way or the other, but we'll start with Christine.
Okay, I echo many of the comments that have been made here at the council table, but one comment that I just wanted to share. I know when Ewing Development came and talked to me a few years ago when they were first looking at the project, and they said that they wanted to, it was going to be established as a co-op. I said, oh no, I'm not going to be supportive of a co-op, because I knew that to me was code for not being taxed commercially, it would be taxed as residential. And that there was a lot of that going on at the time. Since that time, the law has been changed at the legislative level. So I'm happy that that's changed, and it's consistent now for all multifamily buildings, regardless of whether they're listed as a co-op or not. But what strikes me most about this Ewing development project is the fact that they have really taken to heart a lot of the comments and the questions and the concerns that have been expressed. And it has been a very contentious debate throughout the years and the time. And as a developer, I would really have to question, they have gone from such a very dense project to not a dense project. And if you look at a lot of the green space that's still there, you would have to question why they would do that. But I think it goes back directly to a lot of the concerns issued. And I know I had a discussion this morning with them as well, and one of the questions I had was, is there a way that the ongoing green space that's been incorporated into the plan can be made available for the neighborhood? I haven't gotten really the answer I had hoped for, but I also understand that, and I guess I would just throw it out, I don't think the door's been shut, but if there is interest by individuals, that I believe if there was a way that you could step up and assume ongoing maintenance responsibility for it, that I think that there would still be interest. But, you know, I just think that they have really gone the extra mile to be sensitive to not having this be nearly as dense a project as what was originally proposed. So I think it's a good project. It's gone through an extensive vetting process. And I appreciate the input and discussions that have come forward as a result of that.
Thank you. Bob or Skip?
I'll make a couple comments. I first off want to thank those who are here tonight and those who've been supporting this. Either side, both sides have been very cooperative, and I don't think we've run into a contractor who's been any more cooperative than what Ewing has been. Mm-hmm. They've been forthright with us on all of our questions, and I think that what really helps in my decision-making is a reduced density. And I think it's going to be much better accepted, or hopefully it'll be much better accepted for those who live out there and maybe those who are looking forward to moving into this area so they can stay in the area. It's a wonderful area out there in that area. So I thank both of you, both sides, for their efforts in standing up for what they believe. So.
Skip.
Well, to start with, I'm not completely sold on the co-op idea. I think I need to do more research on that. I think we'll have a few more hearings so I can do that. I'm definitely not sold on a building that backs up to the street. We've got one at East 30th and Grand. which was supposed to be the way to build, and I've heard nothing but complaints about that building, the hotel being backed up to the street. With that being said, I want to make a statement about the former owners, the school system. And I think the school system was very short-sighted with short-range planning when they put this on the market. Some other cities have learned what our school system in the past has refused to listen to, and that is neighborhoods transition. They get older, and you've got less kids. The older people move away or pass away, and eventually you've got young kids back again. Columbus, Ohio is one I've thought about where they made a big mistake and they started building new schools where the young people were at, sold the old ones, tore them down, and then all of a sudden they need those schools back and they don't have the property. And Josh did make mention in his presentation that by allowing older people to move into this, it'll free up affordable housing in the area for younger couples, and we know what younger couples bring to the neighborhood is young people, and we're already starting to see that over there. I would like to apologize to the people in that neighborhood for the fact that I think I missed the boat on this whole deal. We sell properties to the schools all the time for $10, $100. We were led to believe the cost was $180,000 on this. I think the proposal should have been on the table to buy it for $100. And Rick, I've got to agree or disagree with you on this. When we see the map of the people that live around there, when you drive through the northwest section of town and see all the Save the Green signs, when you look at those petitions that were turned in from people all over the community and all over central Iowa, they're saying keep it as green space. I do think we have a need for that. I think we should be listening to the citizens of this city.
That'll be the day.
I'm going to, I'll just end this with saying that I believe the vote on this is a defining moment of this council as to whether or not we're going to embrace the philosophy of green infrastructure or not.
Thanks. I do have a couple of comments if everybody else is done. And Josh, why I start, I have two pictures that I was going to put out, but you had them both on one slide in your slideshow, the current PUD and your application. Can I have that screen pulled up? A couple thoughts, and I'm going to try and hit some things real quick, so they'll probably be random. You know, I think all of us up here run for office the first time, and we think that being a politician is a lot like what everybody kind of makes fun of, and we think we're going to show up and there's going to be a yes button and a no button and a straddle the fence button, you know, or, you know, I kind of want it a little both ways. I'm 80% there, but not all the way there. But none of those buttons are there. We get a yes and a no button, and if we have a conflict or we're chicken, we get a abstain button. And in this case, you know, there is a lot of angst about this. All of you, many of you at least, have heard my my remarks before. I've spoke many times to the school board. I've spoke here before. I've spoke to planning and zoning. I went to Rice. I loved that field. I was at the school board the day they decided to close it and tear it down. I was having my own young kids at the time. That day, you know, speaking to Skip's point, that day Rice was the closest building to our family for a public school. That closed. Moore became the closest building. That closed. Woodland became the closest building. That closed. The demographics and other things in Beaverdale are changing, and they have been for 20 years. I hope that we bring a neighborhood school back somewhere closer to the heart of Beaverdale. I think there's an opportunity for that. It's not going to be at this site, and this site clearly is not a big enough footprint for that. I think a lot of people believe that tonight we were deciding whether or not to leave this space green and an open field, or whether or not there would be development there. And I just want to reinforce what many people have said already, and especially some of the people that came up in support of the motion, and that is that development could happen there today. A yes vote on Hallie's motion makes the picture on the left happen. A no vote makes the picture on the right happen. There's not a third option or another way where we can control what the use is for it being a green space. It's approved. Now, over time, there has been. When the last deal fell apart, I think all of us were supportive of the school district going through a bidding process and not an RFP process so that the bidder could do it. Ewing ended up buying it, I think, for half the value of the previous owner. And I still have the materials of the Friends of Rice and the fundraising drive. It starts by saying Rice Field will be sold in less than 60 days. There's never been a secret about the fact that this was going to sell and that the time for action, as the letter says, in 2010 was then. All of us up here have to act with the facts that we have in front of us. And right now, we have an approved zoning. When we approved that in 2007, I was here. And most of the comments that were made, this is the PowerPoint. Bruce, I think you had a big hand in that, and others. And we had a very, very informative PowerPoint and presentation as we did tonight, as you pointed out, Hallie. But most of the presentation were, let's save more of the green space. If there is a compromise there, let's get rid of the commercial development. Let's not make it so dense. At least there's some compromise position that makes the worst of it, the commercial as part of it, pull that out so it doesn't create more traffic, uses that may not be compatible with a family neighborhood, all those kinds of things. And as I look at these two pictures, I can't help but believe that the Ewing people listened carefully to the biggest concerns that we had in 2007 and responded. If we vote yes today, it will not have commercial that was much complained about. It will have significantly more green space. In fact, for those of us that remember Rice, it probably will have more green space than Rice had when Rice was torn down. It will have owners in it instead of tenants. And I think for a neighborhood like Beaverdale that prides itself on the home ownership and young families, that is really, really important and a value that we should recognize. Owners have a huge value to a neighborhood as opposed to 50 or 60 or 100 tenants. It preserves a lot of the green space. As other people have said, the picture on the right required a significant investment by the city to get it done, to fix the sewers, to help through a TIF grant. This picture on the left, Hallie's motion, requires no government money whatsoever, and they're going to move forward to do this without any investment from the city. With all that, I've still been scared to death. I've gone to the property twice in the last 2 weeks. I've walked every inch of it inside and out because I know I'm going to live in Beaverdale in 20 or 30 or 40 years, and I want to make sure, even if I can buy the zoning and all that kind of theoretical legal stuff, I want to make sure that it is high quality. And so when they applied and filled out their application for what they wanted to do, our planning staff shared that commitment to really high quality and threw on 20, it's really 32 different conditions. And I went through the property and I looked at those and identified other ones that were really important to me. I've sent the Ewing development team a couple of emails with a list of 15 or 20 different things that concerned me. Things like, we're a very pedestrian neighborhood. I want the underside of the balconies to be really, really pedestrian friendly, clean, neat, covered, whatever it needs to be. Josh and Ewing has responded to that in a letter today saying that they'll do what they can to respond to it. I'm really proud of the streetscape program. And while the Planning and Zoning Commission has already required them on their own dime to pay for the streetscape, one of the elements of the streetscape is that Beaverdale is going to be the first neighborhood with LED, sustainable, environmentally friendly lighting, which is great. I really value that. And we're going to require them to do the same. Not only that, they're going to pursue, and I think have the points in their model, to be LEED certified. That's another aspect of that. I've sat here through the meeting and earlier today tried to identify one LEED certified building in our city that either is not a nonprofit that pays no taxes or that has done it without city support. And I can't think of one.
Come and go, Godfrey and Free.
Okay, so we have a come and go, a C-store. This is a second one. They don't happen very much without government subsidy, and that's something that we can be proud of. I feel strongly that, like, even the brick should be responsive to the Beaverdale Neighborhood Association. Take no offense to the Iowa Event Center. I drive in front of it every day, but it's kind of a sterile, monolithic, very stale brick. It is brick, but it isn't very cool. And I asked Josh personally that if I was going to support this, I wanted to make sure that it looked visually kind of cool and fit into Beaverdale. And you talked about this, Josh, but you sent and gave council a piece. I'm not sure it looks good enough. Did you have it in your slideshow? Would you do that? Just because I think elements like this are what makes the difference between a high-quality project that will
You want
last.
this on the overhead?
Let's see what he has. But yeah, that'd be great.
I'm not sure it gives it the true. Pull it down just a little bit. There you go.
So you see kind of a more historic, they're kind of the red, deep color, kind of the nicked up, kind of historic looking. They found this in Iowa, which is an advantage in Sioux City. I think those are the kinds of elements that will make this stronger. And there's a letter with 15 probably different elements to it. And Hallie, I said I had one thing maybe to add to your list. I would like to receive and file this letter as kind of a definition of some of those criteria inside the PUD. I think I'm saying that right, Counselor?
But not embedded in the PUD?
We can't embed it in the PUD.
Correct.
They're kind of specific elements. So the planning and zoning said, make it historically relevant to the neighborhood. So this is, the brick, for instance, would be one item that he stipulated in writing to us and made a commitment on. It doesn't go into the PUD, but it would be part of our action tonight. And so I would recommend a slight amendment to your motion that received and filed and use this as kind of a definitional framework for some of the elements of the PUD. You know, I really liked the last proposal. I was not one that was shy about the commercial zoning, the vibrancy in the neighborhood. And I thought I would be the hardest person on the council to get to support the action tonight because I liked the old one so much. I really did. I think it could be really helpful. But I'll tell you, as I close, a personal story. The day I went down the first time to whatever you call it, Vintage Hills, I went with a couple of people. And on my 3 trips, I went with one person that was a contributor to Friends of Rice when it was tried to be purchased. And I went with 2 other people that had yard signs, family yard signs in their family house in support of Friends of Rice. So I didn't go down with a whole bunch of yes people. But the first time I went down, I had to go down and get picked up by him at the hospital because my dad had gotten sick. He's in Arizona today and doing better. So I can tell this story. He won't know I told it. But the whole way down there, and as I walked around this place, I was thinking, oh my gosh, what if something really did happen to my dad and my mom needed someplace to go live? Her church is across the street and friends in the neighborhood and places to eat and shop in a pedestrian-friendly way. And I thought this is really needed in Beaverdale, as many of you has pointed out. And I think this type of living is important and something that we add to the mix in Beaverdale.
I think what Hallie said at the beginning about maintenance on the field.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's black eyes in the city of Des Moines.
With that, Hallie, why don't you restate your motion, unless anybody else has another comment?
My motion would be to approve the amendment to the conceptual plan, moving item 49 with the friendly amendment as Councilman Coleman had laid out.
To receive and file the letter that was presented?
Yes, the letter that we received today. So there's a motion and the slide amendment to the motion. We'll vote on our boards.
Four yes, 1 no.
The motion passes 4 yes, 1 no. Everybody is welcome to stay for the balance of our agenda, but so we transition effectively, why don't we take a 2-minute break and come back and get to work right away. everybody we need is back.
Just shows them way this up here.
Clark's not here. That takes us to item 50. And item 50 is on a request from Drake University for approval of an amendment to the Drake University Recreation PUD conceptual plan affecting 1420 26th Street to allow a basketball practice facility addition to the east side of the Knapp Center. Yes, thank you for being here.
Yes. Thank you, members of the council. My name is Carrie Weig, and I am here representing Drake University. I am with Envision Architecture, and we are the architects on this project. I'll keep my comments brief. I know it's been a long evening for everyone. As you mentioned, we're here requesting an amendment to the current PUD for this property. Drake University is looking to enhance its basketball program by providing their student athletes a practice facility. The project includes about 39,000 square feet of a new addition directly attached to the east side of the Knapp Center. The addition will include 2 basketball practice courts, one for the men and one for the women, locker rooms, and all of the supplementary spaces that are required for that, and also a hospitality space. On the site plan, we are looking, I have a photo here that I'll share in a minute, but just a couple of features on the site plan. We are keeping a lot of the green space that is currently there. It's going to be reconfigured, but there was a desire by the university to keep green space around the new facility. We are maintaining all of the historic trees around the boundary of the property. The existing north drive will remain in place, and then there will be redevelopment of the South Plaza to really create a new entry into the Knapp Center and to enhance that corner of the university. Just real quickly here, I don't know if we can zoom in on that, but this image up here is a preliminary rendering that we've created for the project. We are looking to use brick similar to the Knapp Center. We are working with a local brick company to match the existing brick as closely as we can so that it blends into the rest of that property. And I think that pretty much summarizes it. I did want to note that we are reducing the amount of impervious surface on this site, so we are helping with drainage. We are not adding any water to the city storm systems. And then also, with the way the property is sited, we are exceeding the required setbacks of the current PUD. So that's all.
Thank you.
Excellent.
I'd just quickly add that at the CVB, so I represent the city at the Convention and Visitors Bureau, we've identified this as a priority and trying to help. It makes space available for things like the Junior Olympic Games that come to town, and a lot of those sports struggle, and when those sports can come here, it's a downtime for travel, middle of the summer, and it's a free time in the basketball season year-round. So they've been very cooperative with us, and we're trying to find ways to help even financially. So congratulations, it's a great project.
I know the AAU tournaments tried to come here, and they couldn't find enough gyms, and so Steve Fuller kind of heads that up. Is really in needs, and he'll be happy with this.
Yeah.
And I think I heard a guarantee that this would make the Drake basketball teams really good.
Yeah,
so I will go ahead and move on.
That's probably what brought the new coach here.
Yeah.
Promises.
5 yes?
So the motion passes. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That takes us to item 51, and 51 is a request from Diversity Insurance, Inc. to rezone 1533 and 1541 East Grand Avenue from C2, General Retail and Highway-Oriented Commercial, to NPC, Neighborhood Pedestrian Commercial, to allow an expansion of the existing building at 1541 East Grand Avenue for pedestrian-oriented mixed neighborhood level retail or office uses. And there's an A, which is the first consideration of this ordinance. Any conversation?
I don't know if you're looking for speakers or not, but this is a nice improvement for East Grand over there. On the north side of the street, they already got a nice new buildings, and this will add to the neighborhood over there. So if there's no comments, I'd move this 51 and 51A.
It's been moved. We're all voting.
5 yes?
Motion passes. That takes us to item 52, and it's on a request from Lafredo Gardens, Inc. to rezone 4001 Southwest 63rd Street from PBP, Planned Business Park, to M1, Light Industrial, to allow for approximately 45,000 square feet warehouse building to be developed on the property to the south of the existing facility, subject to conditions. And A is the first consideration of this ordinance. Anybody to speak?
I'll move 52. Oh,
There you go.
sorry.
You gotta vote.
It's been moved. Any other comments or questions? Let's vote.
5 yes.
Thank you. The motion passes 5 yes. Item 53 and 54, Diane, I believe have been just fillers, so there's no action on those. So that takes us to item 55 on the on conveyance of 4350.
We did that.
No,
We're done. We moved that one up.
we've been here long enough.
We're going to adjourn.
I'm not accepting a motion. Hallie had 7:30. Let's stick around 18 minutes and he'll win. Do I need a motion to adjourn? Yes. Hallie has moved it. The meeting is adjourned. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
When you're sitting in a chair, we never hear Mr. Holmes.
Oh, yeah. I just.